How do you build a high-performing culture? This is Culture Architects. Candid conversations with extraordinary leaders sharing their biggest successes, failures, and lessons learned on their culture journeys. Here's David J. Friedman.
Over our many episodes in the Culture Architects podcast, we've interviewed a lot of very interesting people and culture architects who come from all different walks of life. Today, we're going to introduce people to kind of a new side of culture building in a way, as we welcome to the show Andy Busser. And Andy's the CEO of Pitcairn. Now, Pitcairn's a pretty interesting company that we're going to learn a lot about today. They've been around for more than 100 years, so that's a long time. And they serve and advise ultra-high net worth families on the best ways to protect and grow their wealth and build their legacy from generation to generation. So they're into not just the money side of this, but really helping a family build a culture and a legacy for them. So Andy started with the firm way back in 2015. He later became the president of their family office in 2021. And then in 2023, he became the CEO of the company. It was their centennial year as well. We're excited to hear him weigh in on all things culture, whether it's the culture of Pitcairn itself or the culture that the firm is helping the clients' families to build. So, Andy, welcome to the Culture Architects podcast.
Thank you, David.
It's great to have you with us. So, just for the benefit of our listeners, so they get some little bit of background, understanding, have some context for this, just walk us through the concept of exactly what is a family office and a trust company, and what does Pitcairn do in serving these ultra-high net worth families? So just so everybody's got the background here.
Yeah. Well, a family office is a pretty broad term, and people use it to mean a lot of things, but it generally means supporting families who have substantial wealth across a wide range of needs. So certainly investments is an important area, but also lots of the other things that are a real hassle in wealth. So things like taxes and tax planning and estate planning and trustee services and accounting and bookkeeping across various assets. Insurance across various assets, and then things as mundane maybe as household staff payroll and compliance and so on. And then a third very important component is family engagement and family education, and really helping the family stay engaged with each other, helping rising generations of family members feel informed and empowered to make good decisions and to become the next generation of stewards of that family's wealth and perhaps more importantly, their legacy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Granted, many of our listeners probably aren't ultra high net worth individuals. And so that may be for some of them hard to identify with those challenges, but they are challenges nonetheless. If you think about you grew up in a family with extreme wealth, how do you learn to not only deal with that emotionally, psychologically, and otherwise, but to preserve the legacy of what the family stood for, not just from a financial standpoint, that these families stand for certain values, certain ways of doing things, and the newer generations have to learn that. So I'm curious about, I know that you and I have spoken before, and I was fascinated when I looked at some of the things that Pitcairn does in the area of family. I say family planning. I don't mean that in the way some people think of family planning, but family planning and helping a family to think about that legacy. So talk to me about the origins of that. Where did that even come from to start to focus on that?
Well, if you think about it, every family has a legacy. Every family has people who've had a massive impact on that family. If you think about your own family, there's a parent or a grandparent or a cousin, somebody who had a huge impact on you and who you think about a lot, somebody who perhaps helped you define your values as a person, the way you wanted to live your life. And I think that's true in every family. And if we think about the things that we do to help families across these areas of investments and taxes and planning and all kinds of things, there are actually issues in pretty much every family. Whether you're wealthy or not, you have retirement savings, you pay taxes, you have insurance, and you think about your kids. And if you're like most parents, you worry about your kids a little bit, even if they're high achievers and so on. You worry: are they going to be happy? Are they going to dream big and achieve their dreams? These are these are themes that I think run across every family. In the case of our business, we happen to focus on large, complex family wealth structures and families with pretty significant wealth. But that's really, in some ways, a volume question more than a strategy question. For every family, the issues we work on are really relevant.
That's an interesting point. And I think about some of our listeners may have heard the podcast we did with Stephen Shapiro and Nancy Rapport about building family culture. And so you'll understand that, to Andy's point, culture is culture and families are families, whether it's a volume question because they have so much or not. I think it's a really valid point that we still want to raise our children in a certain way, and we all have dreams for what we want to teach those children. So I'm going to take this just in a little bit different direction, and we'll come back to this, but a little bit of history for you as to how you got to Pitcairn. And I know that Pitcairn is really focused on its own culture, let alone what we're doing for families. Its own culture is really, really important to you. And so I want to learn more about, how did you come across that? Where did this culture thing start to become prominent in your brain as a leader? And so give me a little bit of that history, and how did you discover that culture was important?
It's a great question. I've had a real career passport in life rather than a more direct career path the way some people do. And so for me, I was in management consulting early in my career, spent a lot of time on strategy work and investment work. And it was super exciting and rewarding and extremely demanding as well. And in an environment like that, culture matters a lot because you're working late, long hours all the time. You're traveling a lot with your team. And so having a team that has a great culture makes a big difference in the productivity and what you deliver for clients. And early on in my management consulting career, I worked with some fantastic people who really inspired me to be the best version of myself. But I also worked with some people who were not great culture fits. They weren't culture carriers. They were pessimists. They didn't think problems could be solved. They didn't really care what other people thought. And that made a huge impression on me as well, that when you have people in an organization, even on a team, who really don't contribute to the culture, it subtracts from the value the team can create. And it made a huge impression on me early on in my career. And, I think about a quote all the time from General Norman Schwarzkopf, who famous General Stormin' Norman. And he was speaking to some Army cadets, and he said, in your career, great leadership is very valuable, but bad leaders are even more valuable because you learn what not to do. And that has made a big impression on me. And as I've gone through my career in management consulting and then in private equity, and then into the family office world with Pitcairn, the sort of cultural standards almost that I felt I wanted to be a part of and really wanted to lead just became very integrated in the way I think about work and I think about business and I think about people.
So as you think about, you made the comment that you noticed when you were in management consulting that when you worked with people and the culture was strong, that you were able to add more value for clients, that led to value creation. And we often hear, I hear this all the time when, CEOs will sometimes ask me, what's the return on investment on this stuff? Okay, is this, yes, it's nice that everybody's happy. I want them all to feel good. But does this translate into making money? And so what's your point of view about that?
There's no question in my mind that it does. If you just take any team you've ever been a part of, if you're worried about raising a problem because you think somebody is going to react negatively, the chances that you're going to work on that problem and come up with a great solution to it are lower. Mm-hmm. If, on the other hand, you have a problem, a blame-free problem-solving environment, and I know that's an important thing to you, David.
Yes.
It's a very important thing to me and to Pitcairn as well. Then people are more likely to say, you know what, we've been working on this thing, but I don't think it's working. And I think we need to reconsider our approach. And if people say, well, this is a safe place to bring up a sensitive topic like that, then the chances that you're going to get to a better answer are much higher. And I've seen environments for sure, very firsthand, where people were not open to rethinking an issue and were not open to solving a problem. They had to be their way. And where we didn't get to the right answer and where there was destruction of value. And in the investment business, that becomes very clear when an investment doesn't work out the way you wanted because nobody was willing to raise their hand because they were afraid that hand was going to get chopped off.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it from quite that perspective before. But yeah, I guess when you're talking about investments, somebody's got to be willing to stand up. And I imagine in ego-driven environments, which are sort of the opposite of what we're talking about, and somebody doesn't want to acknowledge that I made the wrong decision, people stick with things. I often say that, one of the best examples of checking the ego at the door is the willingness to change your mind, to say, I once thought this and I now think something different. And when people are stuck on, well, I don't want to look stupid or I don't want to look like it was my fault or anything like that. Yeah, I would imagine in the investment world, that could be really costly.
Yeah, it sure can. And it becomes a leadership question at that point. And whenever anything goes wrong in an organization, ultimately it is the CEO who's accountable for that. And so setting an example for people to say, hey, you know what, I got something wrong. When you can set that example as a leader, you're doing your organization a huge favor. And you're giving everybody the freedom to say, you know what, I thought this, but I've got more information now, or I've got more perspective now, and I think we need to rethink it.
Yeah. So you mentioned from a leadership perspective, and I think about that. And I think one of the things I say to people all the time is, in my experience, I say it this way, that the single biggest ingredient or the single most important ingredient in the success of any culture initiative, I call it CEO sponsorship. Starts from the top. If you at Pitcairn are kind of wishy-washy about culture and your HR professional comes to you and says, Andy, I think we ought to work on our culture. And you say, go ahead if you want. It's not going anywhere. It starts with you saying, this is a strategic priority for us. So I'm curious, many of the people that I've interviewed have been, I would say, have been entrepreneurs in that they may have started their companies and been founders. You came into a situation where obviously this company's been around for 100 years, and you come into this 100-year-old company and grow inside of it, but ultimately become the CEO. I'm curious about how you balanced and maybe continue to honoring the culture that had been there for so many years that I'm sure was a big part of Pitcairn's success. And yet at the same time, you're the new CEO and there are visions you have about how things ought to be. So how do you balance the honoring of that legacy with the promotion of whatever things you think need to be different?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way you framed it is exactly the way we think of it and the way I thought of it. And I was extremely fortunate that Pitcairn had a strong culture, a strong track record of achievement. And, as you said, you don't become a 100-year-old firm by screwing up a lot. And that's not to say we don't make mistakes from time to time. We certainly do. But we're we've got a culture where we're all willing to raise our hand and say, hey, here's a mistake. Let's go fix it. And everybody says, okay, let's go fix it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when I came in, the culture at Pitcairn was very strong. The commitment to excellent work product has been strong for a long, long time at Pitcairn. I think one of the other things I love about the firm and have from day one is even though we've been around for 100 years and have a very fortunate leadership position in our industry, we never think we've got all the answers. And that is a culture that pervades the whole firm, that we're always willing to revisit an issue and ask ourselves how we've done this well for a long time, but how could we do it better? And I think that mindset going in for everybody, rather than the I invented this and I know it works kind of mindset, I think has been instrumental to our culture. And for me, when I had the privilege to become the CEO, my predecessor had done an excellent job of setting the stage for me. And she and I worked on this transition for several years. And she was extremely gracious in giving me a lot of leeway before I became CEO. And then when I became CEO, She retired fairly quickly thereafter, and she really wanted to give me the freedom to lead the firm and not have her kind of looking over my shoulder all the time. And that's another thing that makes a huge difference in the culture.
So let's talk about that culture. What are some of the, we know it's a healthy culture. It's a strong culture. It's a culture of improvement, of being willing to try new things and reinvent yourselves. How do you define that? And how does that, if I was a new employee and I just got hired by Pitcairn, how do I learn what this culture is and how do I learn to adopt that?
Well, hopefully you've learned it in the interview process. And I will say, whenever I meet with a candidate, and I try to meet with everybody we hire, I'm usually the last interview, and it's usually just our team being courteous to me. They've made the decision.
Let's let Andy have a look.
Yeah, exactly.
That way he'll feel important.
Right, exactly. And but the first thing that every new hire says to me is, "Wow, the culture here seems awesome, and it seems supportive. It seems optimistic. It seems like a problem-solving culture. It seems like a place where I could learn a lot and grow as a person." And people always say that to me. And when I maybe haven't met somebody in the interview process, I'll usually meet them on their first day. In fact, not usually, always, if I'm in the office. And it's the first thing everybody says to me. And it tells me that our culture is our leading asset. And that is incredibly gratifying to me, because I do, in my heart of hearts, believe that is the essence of how you create value, how you create sustained value, not just short-term value, which anybody can do by manipulating a balance sheet or whatever, but where you build a long-term sustainable organization. You do that through culture. And so we document it. And on your first day at Pitcairn, you have a welcome to Pitcairn presentation, and you can stop and ask any question you want. And we talk through the 5 behaviors of our firm, which we shamelessly stole from a great restaurateur named Danny Meyer. And those 5 behaviors are really explicit for everybody. And I think they do pervade our firm.
So what are those 5 behaviors?
So the 5 behaviors, it's called 51%er behavior. And this was Danny Meyer really promoted this, and fabulous restaurateur in New York. For those of you who don't know New York or New York restaurants, which I'm sure is most of you, he also founded a restaurant chain called Shake Shack. So amazing guy, highly entrepreneurial and very successful. And so the 5 characteristics of a 51%er are: first, warm optimism. So a belief that the glass is always at least half full and that any problem can be solved. You may not have the solution right away, but it can be. Mm-hmm. So warm optimism is number 1. Number 2, deep curiosity. Just a constant desire to learn more and more about anything you can learn about. And that is a great way to go through life and a great way to go through business. Third is a commitment to excellent work product. And that you won't put your name on something unless it is outstanding. So you double check your work, you make sure you've thought things through, you make sure what you've written makes sense, and you make sure that the production quality of it is very high. And then fourth is self-awareness, that a genuine sense of yourself, a sense of what makes you tick, and a sense of how you make other people feel. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's very hard. Anybody who's walked through an airport and sees people stop in the middle of the corridor to try to look around a little bit knows that not every human being is full of self-awareness. And then fifth, very importantly, is empathy and a genuine sense of how other people feel, and a genuine sense of how you can help them. And if you package those 5 things together, warm optimism, deep curiosity, a commitment to excellent work product, true self-awareness, and genuine empathy. That's a wonderful combination, and that is an organization full of people who are going to get a lot of great things done.
And what's interesting as I'm listening to you describe that, Andy, is I'm thinking about, so Danny Myers is talking about that in a restaurant, and you're talking about that in, wealth and family planning for ultra high net worth individuals. To some extent, some on the outside might think, well, these are pretty different. And yet the same set of principles applies nearly everywhere. And of course, I talk about this all over the country every week, but sometimes people will ask me, shouldn't my culture be unique? And I often say to them that it's not those 5 attributes that you're describing that are so unique. There's applicable in your company as they are in mine, as they are in a restaurant, as they are in a landscaping business or a construction company or a law firm or anything. Well, maybe not a law firm, but any other normal business. And so people are looking for something unique. And I always tell them it's not those behaviors that are unique, it's the execution of them that's unique.
Yeah.
And that's really the difference. So talk about that from your perspective, that how non-unique these are, but it's the execution, and how do you execute that better than others?
Yeah. And first of all, there's a great presumption in your question that we do, but I hope we do. And it goes back to something you said earlier. It starts with me. It starts with the CEO. And if I am exhibiting 51% behaviors, the chances that other people will do it go up significantly. If I'm cutting corners on those behaviors, the chances that our culture is going to hold go down a lot. And so I totally agree with you. They're not unique. I mean, for goodness sake, Danny wrote it in a book. Anybody can read it. And, but it is the execution, and it is the leadership of the CEO and the executive team at a firm, and it's who we promote into management positions. Are they 51%ers? Are they hiring other 51%ers? Are we being disciplined in our process to make sure that we're bringing on people, not just for technical skill, but more importantly for cultural skill? And if we think about this, just playing this forward a little bit into the future, as AI becomes more and more ubiquitous in our lives, the skills that are going to promote us are not necessarily technical skills, which we're going to be able to tap at a moment's notice. It's going to be our ability to be really curious and ask great questions and then help teams of people execute on them successfully.
Yeah, and so much of that, and I'm sure, this is true in any business, but especially in a business like yours, so much of that comes down to trust. And if you think about those 5 behaviors are also very related to trust. Do those well, and I feel comfortable with you. I trust you. Don't do those well, and you erode trust. And so much of it, and that you can't do trust with AI.
It's
not
certainly
an AI
not
fix.
yet.
Not yet, at least. Yes, it comes from the people part of that.
Yeah.
Folks, that's the end of the first half of my conversation with Andy Busser, CEO at Pitcairn. When we come back on the next episode of Culture Architects, Andy and I are going to keep talking about how the Pitcairn culture is taught and reinforced on a daily basis. He'll also walk us through the culture aspect of their firm's historic first ever acquisition. You're in for a great discussion, so make sure to stay tuned.
This has been Culture Architects with David J. Friedman. Join us next time for more insights and wisdom from great leaders in all walks of life. To book David for your next event, or to learn more about his writing, speaking, or consulting, go to davidjfriedman.com. Culture Architects with David J. Friedman is a production of CultureWise.